And we're live. Good late evening, ladies and gentlemen. Hope everybody's doing all right tonight during this quarantine. This is a late show. Sorry, these things are kind of sporadic. The last one that I did, um, it was late enough. Linda had to work the next day, so I just slept on the couch, and it completely destroyed me. My sciatic, and I usually have it, every once in a while, but it's not ever that bad. This is as bad as it's ever been. And of course, Linda gives me these stretches to do that that I can't do when I don't have sciatica. So yeah, I think you had something actually for me to do. You're going to show me after a while. But hey,
Yeah, absolutely.
my guest, Jason McLean. How are you, sir?
So far, so good. I understand you need a little extra sex appeal for tonight's show.
Absolutely. Yeah, I got Russell Mogollon Monster is going to be joining us here in a little bit. He had to work.
Excellent.
Yep, he's going to join us. So um, we're going to be taking questions throughout the whole show here. Just make sure if you have a question, put it in caps. I do have a few announcements to make. This show, we're going to kick it off with fear and what I consider rational fear, irrational fear, um, and how it affects people. And with Bigfoot, I mean, I can relate to it. I'm not ashamed to admit it. Although I've said, I don't think it's fear so much that keeps me out of the woods. But when it comes right down to it, it really is. It's exactly what it is. There's no point in not admitting it. Um, there are, and it's hard to really to make people understand, to explain exactly what I'm talking about. You know, I don't think anything's going to get me if I go back in the woods. It's not really that. And it's so hard to explain to people. It's kind of like I was talking to Linda today about it, and she mentioned this thing is called white coat syndrome. And it's people who are afraid of doctors. They won't even go to the doctor's office. If you can get them into the doctor's office and they're sitting there with a bunch of sick people and someone coughs, they're out of there. They leave. So, I mean, would you consider that irrational or rational? I mean, to them, I'm sure it's rational, but it's not. Our agoraphobia is one of those things. People that are just afraid to leave their house, and
Let me throw one question in here.
all right,
And you just well, we're going to sift out this Melu because I think there are many other facets to this. It's not just rational, irrational. I think there is rational, irrational, but then there's also hyper rational. And then the question I would ask is also when since we're going to throw the whole Bigfoot thing in there, how much of it is? I'm trying to think about how if it's. I'm going to use the word programmed for just as a filler because I don't know that I have the right word for it. And what I mean by that is, as we've seen, not just with Bigfoot, but other some obviously supernatural creatures, there are explanation. There are these accounts will often say they felt the fear before they saw the creature. Right? It wasn't they saw something and they freaked out. Some people have described full blown panic attacks before anything's ever seen or even heard, before they're aware of anything. The panic attack is prior to the encounter. So, since we have to mix some of that into the Melu, I would ask. I do think there's rational fear, irrational fear. I would say there's hyper rational fear, and then there's this. I'm going to use the word programmed fear, and then so we can flesh all that out. For example, like the white coat syndrome, right? Which is they're how I would say that's almost a hyper rational fear. What I mean by that is oftentimes we kind of balance some things out and we're like, okay, odds being what they are, I'm safe to drive today, right? But we all know that thousands and thousands of people die every day getting into a car going to work. They weren't drunk, they weren't doing anything erratic. Heck, late last year, I was driving in a straight line by myself in my car. I was just returning a closing package because I was a mobile notary at the time, to the title company that I was working with. I didn't do anything wrong. I'm just sitting there. Some guy behind me loses control of his car, hits me. I flip around 180 degrees, upside down 3 times, and stop on the side of the road. People, I mean, I crawled out. I was fine. I had a rib was out of place, and I mean, nothing but honor to God for me being able to even walk away from that.
Right.
At one point, I thought, I'm dead. Like, this is it. I was 70 miles an hour. I'm now upside down, 180 degrees, facing the wrong direction. I'm dead. I know this. But I get out, and I look at it, I'm like, I did nothing wrong, and I'm fine. But how many people did that not happen for? Right? How many people doing absolutely nothing die in a car accident? My point being, I could get back into a car and say, I'm safe, it was a freak thing. But we know thousands of people die. If someone were to tell me I'm scared to drive, I can't tell them that they're wrong, because they see the numbers. Like, look, maybe the odds are in my favor, maybe they're not. But it's random, right?
Sure.
So that I would call that almost a hyper-rational fear, where it's like, you know that there is a chance that you're going to die. You just don't throw that out of your mind, right? It's always there. Now, we could call it maybe obsessive or anything, but I think that's almost hyper-rational.
Right, but okay, for me, and you have to believe that it's perception, okay?
Yes.
This is a perception, and perception is reality. It's just it's the way it is, whether people want to see it that way or not. Perception, it might, if it's the way you see it, that might as well be the way it is.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, there are people that have encounters with these creatures, and I'm not going to set aside that the manner in which they have this encounter, I'm sure, has a lot to do with it. I'm sure it had a lot to do with it for me. But there are people that have had much worse things go on with them, and they're able to get back in the woods. Now, I would equate it to, okay, as far as for me, put a 2x4 on the ground, a 10-foot 2x4, and ask me to walk it, or ask anybody to walk that 2x4.
Yeah.
Okay, you can walk across it, no problem. Now, raise it 50 feet in the air. Okay, it's the same 2x4. Nothing changes, except now you have to prepare yourself to be a hell of a lot more careful. Okay.
Right.
I would say that's probably where my board was at one point. I probably got it down to about 15 feet. I don't think I'm going to die, but that's still a long way to fall.
It is.
So I'm still going to prepare myself that much. It's not like the board is on the ground like it used to be, because now I know.
Right.
I think that's the problem with me, is knowing that, or what I believe about Sasquatch, about these creatures and what their abilities are. They can be right there and you not know it. In my mind, that's the way it is, that they're just right there. So that's why I take certain precautions, but these things still happen to me. These anxieties still come upon me. And when I go, and it's almost every single time, it's got something to do with my stomach. I don't know. I get the nervous stomach, and I got to go to the bathroom like right now. So that's one preparation I got to make. I know it sounds funny, but it's something that I have to prepare for.
I get you.
I have to prepare for that. And if I don't have my camera with me, my camera right back here, it's that much worse. So, because at least with the camera, and I've got to focus. If it's just going for a hike in the woods, it's almost impossible for me. I just can't do it. I don't want to do it, is the thing. I know I can do it, and I don't think anything's going to happen to me.
Right.
It's my body that doesn't want me to do it. So
So again, I would say that's not necessarily an irrational fear, right? I mean, irrational would be, I'm afraid to go into the woods because a duck will watch me. That would be an irrational fear, right?
Okay.
Don't get me wrong. Ducks are terrible creatures, and they should pay for their crimes against man and God. But being fearful of a duck watching you, that's irrational. Knowing that there is an 800-pound, 8-foot tall apex predator with, as near as we can tell, either a preternatural or supernatural ability to just be completely undetectable, I think it's a rational fear, dude. That's not irrational.
I wasn't saying that it wasn't. Okay. And it might have been a poor choice of words.
No. It's not. I kind of want to help you flesh this out, because I think there's something you're touching on.
Well, what I'm trying to do is to tell everyone your board is 50 feet off the ground. It's not actually on the ground. That's the way you should see this. This is what absolutely. You should do. You should prepare yourself as if that board is up there, and really be careful when you're walking across it. That's what I'm trying to convey out to people. Maybe not 50 feet, okay? At least 15, where you're going to feel it, if you fall off. This can potentially have have an effect on you. What
Right.
gets me are the people that are able somehow to go through the traumatic experience, if they see it that way or not. It's something happens. They have to run out of the woods, and they're
Right.
able to go right back in. I can't make that connection with it, and maybe somebody can help me with this. How if that's happened to somebody else. Let's see. I'm looking at the chat, you guys, the whole
Yeah.
time. But I'm not reading anything that's not in caps. I see you
Yeah.
guys saying hi to each other in there a lot.
Mhm.
Here's one right here. Dogma. I have the same problem, fear and anxiety. I know where all the bathrooms are in my traveling zone. For real. There you go.
Yeah. No,
You've planned it out.
and so yeah, listen, I want to go back to the fact that you have a rational fear, right? You're right. People are putting their boards are, like you said, maybe they are 50 feet high, right? It is, but maybe it's not a 2x4, maybe it's a 4x4, right? Maybe there's a little more room on the board, so it's a little bit harder. But the
I think
fact
a 4x4 is the same amount of room.
is it? All right.
Yeah, 4 inches.
Yeah, that's right. I had the
Two by 6.
4 inches. Yeah, 2x6. There we go. Yeah, I had it sideways for this. For example, I'm thinking about weight. Anyway, my point being is I think you have an interesting point there, right? And I think it's really the trauma. The trauma is the question, right? It's not the fear, right? It's more about the level of trauma experience, because what you're describing really more sounds okay. People get touchy when you use the word PTSD, right? But there are traumas related to. And let me just take this out of the world of Bigfooting for a second. I have a friend who I need to murder. I use it metaphorically, but only halfway. So turns out, back during the whole big thing with Ebola, he traveled to Africa to help with the Ebola outbreak. He contracted it. He was brought back to the U.S. and he recovered. He never told any of us. This is like 5 years ago, 6 years ago now. He contracted. He was in town. He could have just said, "Hey, I'm here. This is what's going on," and I would have absolutely helped him out. In the paper, this is how I learned about it. In the paper just a few months ago, I'm reading about how he's recovered from it, and the entire point of the article, though, was the trauma suffered from being in the hospital, right, for these long stays. My son, my youngest, has had to have and will continue to have numerous surgeries. There are differing kinds of trauma that impact us differently, right?
Sure.
Even things that, we often think about the soldier under fire, and that is absolutely, obviously, the number one thing. But police officers who are homicide detectives, I have a friend who was a homicide detective. He's on PTSD medication because of what he experienced. He was never under fire, but the trauma of these murder victims that he saw scarred him forever. Being in, a hospital room thinking about your own mortality, that's a traumatic experience. Again, I can imagine, because I've never come face to face with one, as far as I'm aware of, coming face to face with a massive apex predator that you have been told your entire life does not exist is a traumatic event in effect. Why some people don't seem to be as traumatized by it than others, I don't know.
Brandon has an interesting point here. Brandon Shoma, I saw this. It says, Kerry, it's probably because they did believe in Bigfoot already. So that's why the bad encounter didn't affect them versus someone who didn't believe in the creature and see one in person. Now, I don't want to say that I didn't believe in them. I don't really remember if I did or not. I do know that I was probably indifferent. Probably, it could be possible. Definitely not around here. Wouldn't surprise me if it was all a bunch of hooey. That probably was my attitude toward it. Not remotely on my radar. So it was a huge surprise.
Well, as I recall, and maybe I'm wrong, but didn't you? Unfortunately, that's why I have to write everything down. As I recall, your experience, you said the face almost contorted to being
it was
demonic, right? Yeah, it wasn't just that you saw something. You didn't just see something that you, like you said, you just didn't. you're like, okay, whatever. You were indifferent to it at least.
Right.
You didn't just see something. You had this thing essentially threaten you, right? Your life was threatened.
Yeah, I've considered all those things.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So I mean, that's right. So what you have is not just the trauma of having your life threatened. You have the trauma of your entire worldview being shattered at the same time. Mogollon
Monster,
What's
welcome.
up, guys?
How are you?
What's up, man?
Have you been able to catch any of the discussion?
All right, I can't hear you.
You can't hear us. Great. I'm trying to tell him to go to his settings and add his earbuds. Here, let me text it to him.
You gotta figure out
I'm gonna text it to you.
Yeah, that's off. Can you guys hear me all right?
Yeah, we can hear you.
All right, because I can't hear you. So hold on.
All right. I messaged him. Yes, no, I agree. It's I've considered.
There we are.
You got it?
Yep.
Did you have to go into your settings and add your earbuds?
It was the settings on StreamYard that was different.
Right.
So
yeah, that's usually how it is. Have you caught any of this discussion so far?
No, not really.
Okay. We're just trying to touch on something different. Fear, something that I'm have experienced firsthand and still do. The fear of coming in contact with one of these creatures and how some people are able to just, go through it and go back. And then you have people like me. Jason mentioned PTSD. I don't like to call it PTSD just because I don't want to disrespect anybody that's been through war. I haven't. It could be the same thing. I don't know, but I haven't been through war. So, and it's kind of what it gets equated to, is that. So I can go into the woods, no problem, but I have to prepare myself to do it. I have to know I've got a certain criteria that I have to stick to. I can't just laissez-faire go busting off through the bushes like a lot of people do, or even going down trail. It's just difficult for me to do. And Linda just does it. She just goes. She'll be 100 yards away, and it's freaking me out. But she still does it. She knows it bothers me, and she still does it anyway. I can remember the very first time she did it. I was upset. We were out in the middle of Florida. We were in the middle of Florida, and I had been looking at all these images that Mark Zaski was bringing in. So we knew what was there. It's the middle of the day, and she and Melanie just take off, and then they're out of sight. Mm-hmm. And now I'm yelling. No reply. And all I can think is a 10-footer snatched them out of the wood, right. And it's over. And so we had a long talk about that. So at least she after that, she did stay within earshot, but she wanted to experience it. She wants to see one. And I want her to see one. I want her to have that experience and know, not have to just rely on, believing everything she's told. Because there is a difference. It's a distinct difference, because there's always going to be a level of doubt. If you haven't experienced it, you haven't seen it, even if it's 0.001%, it has to be there. There's no other way around it, So I want her to experience it. And then I think anybody should. I hope they have a good one. What I'm trying to tell people and convey, even through Bigfoot Odyssey, and trying to validate, at least in people's minds, that these creatures are out there. Just you never know what can happen. They're not all cuddly, fuzzy, teddy bears that want to be your friend. I know this for a fact. That I believe to this day, if I didn't have my gun with me, it would have been a lot worse. Things would have been a lot worse. I do think the gun to a degree saved me in getting out of there, because I believe 100% he knew exactly what it was. I saw another question over here.
Yeah, go for it.
But if you want to chime in on any of that.
Well, I also want to, I want to see one. I went up to the Mogollon Rim Tuesday, came back Thursday. I hooked up with Kevin Keeney from Arizona Squatch.
Good guy.
Yeah, really, really nice guy. And some other Chuck Jacobs from the BFRO. He was there, and we talked and we told stories, and I got an interview, which was cool. Got a lot of footage, did a lot of fishing, amazing fishing.
Nice.
But yeah, I mean, I even said in the video, like in our interview, I said, I'm here now. I'm in the woods. I want to see something. Yeah, it might scare the hell out of me, and it might change the way I think in the future. But right now, I'm game. You know.
So is that the difference? You know, Brandon Shoma, nobody knows 808. He touched on it earlier. Is that the difference? Is that some of these people that have these experiences know what's there already? They have this traumatic experience, so it's okay for them to go back again. Now, I've seen it 20 times. People want to do research. They go, they get all their stuff together, and they first get out there and they hear a tree knock or a scream in the distance. They're like, okay, we got to go. You know, and I mean, that's the thing that you're there to experience is that. Why are you leaving now? But they still leave, and then they come back the very next weekend. You know, it's the weekend warrior. So what is it that makes someone, I just think it's just dumb. I can't wrap my head around people putting themselves in that situation on purpose. It's just hard for me. It's like it's a daredevil thing, I guess. Maybe it's an adrenaline thing. It's jumping out of an airplane with a parachute that you know every one out of every 1,000 that you choose is not going to open, but you still go do it. I don't. I mean, I like living. I enjoy life. You know.
The way I see it, I mean, what's the chances of being that's your destiny to be killed by a Bigfoot or a Sasquatch? I mean,
I get it.
What a hell of a way to go. I mean, what's the chance? I mean, you're better chance of getting struck by lightning.
Well,
yeah,
hold on, real quick. Do we actually know that?
I'm guessing.
mean, well, but see, that's my. So I think this is to Kerry's point, and this is something I've kind of asked for a while. And I think, you know, I think the whole missing 411. I think there's a lot more going on than just like say Bigfoot. But I asked the question a lot: how often do people disappear? They're just gone, right? Now, don't get me wrong, I think there's other things going, but I'm like, if we have this apex predator running around, how do we know that a lot of people who haven't just gone, who've gone missing, or maybe they went missing, but we found them and their bodies were torn apart, they get chucked right. to panthers, right?
Yeah,
and it's like, else. Well, or whatever, but it's like we don't know what those numbers are at all.
And well, I've never been struck by lightning, but I've been face to face with a Bigfoot, 80 feet away.
True. Yeah.
Feared for my life. Thought I wasn't going to make it out. That has happened to me. So this is going back 10 years. It took to go back into the woods, but I had to make preparations to do it. There has to be a point, a purpose to it. I can't just go hiking through the woods. I won't ever go hunt again, you know, for several different reasons. But one is there's no point in it for me anymore. I've gotten way beyond any of that. Being in this subject and doing what we're doing with it, if I was in the subject and hadn't had an experience with it, I'd probably be researching. I'd probably be trying to see it just like anybody else would. You know, if I'd had a glimpse or if someone showed me something that really convinced me that the creatures were real and I paid attention to it and I cared anything at all about it, then that's what I would probably be doing. But I tried that. I tried doing that. I just couldn't do it. I didn't want to be out there. It was just a nervous thing. And it's not conscious. It's so hard to explain. It's a physical feeling. It's not a I think I'm gonna die, really. It's just it's the board. It's the board on the ground. It's the 2x4 on the ground. If you didn't hear my terrible analogy, Russell, this is it.
No.
Oh, I think it's a great analogy.
The 10-foot 2x4 laying on the ground, right? And you just tell someone to walk across it. And okay, they walk across it just fine. Now raise it 50 feet in the air. It's still the same 2x4. So what's different? Now, you know, if you slip up one time, you're probably going to die. Okay. Or let's say, like I said, I brought my board down to about 15 feet. Now, if I won't die, it's really going to hurt if I fall off. So I have to prepare myself. I have to be very extremely careful in my own mind. Maybe I don't have to be, but learning a little bit about these creatures and what they are able to do, whether they can cloak or not, they hide very well. They can be right there and you not know it. And in my mind, that's what I see. When I go in, he could be right there in those bushes. I felt this the other day when I went into these woods to film. And I got some background film for the shutter. Begging, please don't let me find a structure. I hope like hell I don't see a footprint. You know, I don't want to see any of these things. I just want to come through here and get some of this cool footage through this woods. And then I went in. Of course, I have my gun and my Raptor and all that with me. And I was okay. I came out of it fine. But it's still there. There's no getting rid of it for me. So but I still have to prepare myself. What I'm trying to wrap my brain around are the people that have these experiences and can go back without an issue. No problem. And I know maybe I'm just a different type of person. I thought I was, tough guy, obviously, and knew everything there was to know about the woods. And maybe it was the way it all happened. Could be just that very thing right there. But that's what I wanted to discuss a little bit, and we can get into something else. I just kind of wanted to kick that off a little bit.
Well, I mean, I think by the time we're done with the subject, I would like to talk about why the McRib is called McRib when it's neither ribs or Scottish. But I want to touch on something you said for a second because, okay, so Mogollon as well. We were talking about sort of the trauma of it, right? It's like he had a traumatic experience, and so I want to take beyond fear to trauma, but I want to take it one step further because what you were describing was almost Pavlovian. And it's almost, when I go back to programmed fear, right? It's almost a Pavlovian response to this. It's you're not reacting to the fear, but rather you're programmed for it. Again, just to throw it out there, since we do know that some, whether we like it or not, there is some form of at least with some people, right? Like I said, I described where people feel the fear before they see the entity, right? That goes with both Bigfoot and some of these other creatures. What is their connection? We don't know. But since you had such a traumatic fear, maybe it's trauma, but maybe there's also some level of programming to it, right? What if, and let me just speculate, again, I'm not saying it's not the trauma, but if these things can, maybe they don't cloak the way we think like the Romulans do, or the Predator was like the light spinning around them or anything. What if it's simply something as simple as they have some ability, call it psychic ability, whatever, to simply make you not realize they're there, right? Doctor Who, they call it the same perception filter, where it's like
power of perception, or
exactly
suggestion.
Right. Suggestion, right? That maybe they're somehow able to make you suggest. In a reverse of that, maybe if they can suppress your ability to perceive them or to notice them, maybe they can impress their perception of their existence on you to a greater extent, almost as a defensive mechanism. Sure, maybe they're going to make themselves look all big and scary and make you feel but maybe they can actually really press that fear into you. So it's not just that you had a traumatic experience. They're literally start going and hardwiring you, being like, let's not do this again. Goodbye. Right? As that one extra step of not having to bring you into physical contact. So it's right. What you're experiencing is some of the side effect of them saying, I don't want you around. And maybe that's it.
There's things that I realize in here, okay, that it wasn't really that bad of an experience. I mean, yeah, he was angry and upset, but he was 80 feet away, which is close, but not that close. He didn't sneak up. He let me know he was coming. He knew he wanted me, obviously, wanted me to know that he was coming. And I think he was looking at me to make sure I wasn't doing anything stupid, like pointing my gun at it when he was coming through that thicket. And all I could see was his head, 150 feet away through there. And I thought it was a black guy, but he could have snuck up on me if he wanted to get me. So I don't think he wanted to hurt me at all. Okay. Right. Even knowing that, still have this issue. Okay. And I think about it a lot, and I can tell myself I don't have it anymore, but it's a lie because I do. And I just need to just say it. I still have this issue. It's like my body is reacting like it's actually happening, whether my brain knows it is or not. It's how I feel on the inside. Okay. And I have to fight that every time we go in. We're actually, in quick announcement right quick. We are going to film number 13 next Saturday. Got a new Odyssey coming out. We're going to North Mississippi, about 5 hours north of here. I say we. I don't think Linda's going to make it, but I'm going up there. Joe Flippo, he has this thing he does with people around a campfire where they tell their encounter stories. I'm going to do his story, his interview. I'm going to interview these guys around the campfire. Cam Buckner from Dixie Cryptid's going to be there with me.
Nice.
Nice. So that's going to be episode 13, people. It's coming. I didn't think we were going to get to it for a long time, with all this Corona stuff happening, but it is coming. So y'all be ready for it. I've got the cameras, the drones. I got everything, all the SD cards packed up, ready to go. I'm actually really excited about this because we're not going in the woods. We're just going to be, I'm going to fly the drone around, and maybe we'll go in the woods. I don't know, but I'll be okay. It won't be that. We won't be trekking through looking for anything. I can tell you that. I'm just telling this guy's story. Oh, back to basics. Back to making documentaries.
Yeah.
But see, that's my thing here. Is I do know that I don't think I'm going to get attacked when I go in. It's in my brain, So does that make it irrational? Because I do know these things and I still react and feel this way. What's causing this? Is it can't be subconscious because I'm conscious of it.
Well, your sudden change in paradigm, is traumatic. I mean, it was instantaneous. When you thought it was a guy coming at you, and then all of a sudden you realize it's not, and you're like, "What the hell is that?"
It's been 13 years, though.
Yeah. So what? There are people who won't tell a story after 50 years. That are still carrying these, stories with them, and they won't come out and tell them. I can,
Yeah, you're right.
It's not irrational.
Yeah, thank you, Mogollon. That's my point. Is trauma something that our culture, and it probably, most cultures don't do very well, is understand the effect of trauma. We think, time should heal all wounds. Time does not heal all wounds at all. There are some things that are they're burned into your brain, right? And trauma is one of them. My father was a Vietnam veteran. There were things I found out about him only after he passed. Like, he would tell me all these stories by the time he spent in Europe. He told you all those stories. He told precisely 3 stories about Vietnam. That's it. And it's the 3 stories that don't connect with some of what he saw. There were just things he would never, ever talk about. Because even the act of recounting the story brought all that right back to him. Trauma is not a bad experience. Trauma is something that sears and really gets into your psyche. So that's why I don't want to push too hard on the possibility of this almost a supernatural thing, when I think trauma is a perfect explanation for it. And you know what? Just personal for my thing, right? My life. I was 17, driving to go to a 6 a.m. Bible study. And I'm on basically just not a deserted road, but it's a big road. But lady, oh no, you're fine. I come to an intersection. Lady is making a left-hand turn. She misjudges how fast I'm going because it's dark, right? I have my lights on, but it doesn't matter. She just misjudges. She spins me 180 degrees around into a lamppost, and I bounce off it. For years after that, anytime I saw a car in the left-hand lane getting ready to make a left-hand turn, I'd freak out. I mean, there was that. It was just the dread of they're going to turn at a time when I can't do anything about it, and I'm gone, right? And it was every single car. Before that, I had driven. I knew that was always a possibility, but it never affected me. It took me years to get over the fear of that car is going to turn, and I'm going to die.
Well, also at 17, you're a new driver, you're an impressionable driver, and something like that impacts you, at such an early age, in my opinion,
I've been driving since I was 12. We won't get into that.
Yeah, okay.
All right. Albo says, Kerry, what preparations? Just making sure that I have a focus, that I've got something else I can focus on, and going in, being, I guess, hyper aware. Okay, I've got knowing every step I make, my gun is on my side. I'm just being more careful, is what I'm saying. That's why I use the 2x4 analogy. You know, if you were walking across a 2x4 on the ground, you wouldn't be worried about falling off of it. Okay, you're a lot more laissez-faire. 50 feet up, it's the same 2x4. You can still walk across it, but you're going to prepare yourself and center yourself a lot more before going in. That's the kind of preparations that I'm talking about. For me, I just make sure I have something else that I can focus on. Like I'm shooting a film, I'm thinking about what's going on, how the storyboard is going to be laid out. You know, how is this film going to go? As long as I have that, I seem to be fine. And when I have my wife with me, my bodyguard, you know, she's the one, you know, and we both have guns. Not that I think guns are going to save us or anything, but I've thought about what am I going to do, and it's just a legit concern that if I do happen to see one again, that I'm going to draw my gun and shoot at it. I don't want to do that, but in the moment, that's a possibility for me. It's not something it's not a conscious thing that I want to do.
It's a knee-jerk reaction.
Yeah, that's what I'm kind of afraid of, that actually. So I sometimes have reservations about even taking a gun into places like Florida, because they're close by there. We know right where they are when we go in there. We know where they are.
First of all, you should always be armed going into Florida. Florida is weird enough as it is. Forget the Bigfoot and the skunk apes. They got zombies there. They got Floridians there. It's bad enough. Yeah, Floridians, they're bad enough, man. Okay, so like Florida is
alligators.
Exactly. Well, Florida is basically America's East Texas, right? If you're from Dallas, you say it's from East Texas, we're like, okay, we get it. We know. Florida is basically just the United States' East Texas, right?
My family's from East Texas. Just wanted to let you know that.
So is mine. That's what I'm saying. Like my mother's side of the family all comes out of East Texas. Believe me, I get it. Nacogdoches.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, thank you. Anyway, long story short, the simple fact of the matter is, I get what you're saying, right? You're doing what you've got to do to go into the woods. You know what? Let me go back to Martin. Okay, this is going to sound strange, but give me 2 seconds. I love the fact that I'm saying it sounds strange on a Bigfoot show. Martin Luther, when he became a monk, right? He was struck. We talked about struck by lightning. He was actually struck by lightning. He survived, and he went and became a monk, right? Well, one of the things that the more he got into it, because originally he was going to be an attorney, the more he got into it, he started doing prayers and all these things so much that the monks thought, they're like, he must be gold bricking and avoiding his other chores because he's always in confession. You're like, you live in a monastery. What could you like? The guy who's over the orders, like, how much sin can you get away with in a monastery, dude? Calm your butt down. But the thing that happened to him, I was reading years ago, I was reading a biography on him. They said flat out, he was actually hyper. They flat said he was actually hyper aware of the teachings of the scripture, right? The reason he ended up creating Protestantism was he was like, well, hold on, this is what we're being told by. I'm not trying to make this a religious thing, but it's like, if this is the story, if this is what we're being told, and this is how it works, then this is what I got to do. He was actually hyper aware. He wasn't able to put things aside. In the same way, I think what's happening with you is you are being hyper aware of the situation. I think most people can block it out, and I don't think it's a bad thing that you don't. Right? I think this is maybe something else we don't do very well about. I don't want to use the term mental illness because that's not what you have, and having a traumatic experience is not a mental illness. But we look at people and it's like, well, why can't you just get over this traumatic effect? And we look down on people for that. And I think it's a terrible idea. I think that there are certain people process information differently, and that's what makes them unique and special and amazing. But that also comes with certain things, right? Like if you want grapes on a grapevine, you got to cut back all that beautiful green foliage. If you really want the grapes, if you don't want all the grapes, leave the green foliage. But you can't have one without the other, right? I think the problem is we all process things differently. You had a very traumatic, like you said, if he wanted you dead, he would have killed you.
Right.
He clearly didn't want you dead. But you know what he did want you is scared as hell. That's what he wanted you. And again, this is why I'm not saying that's what it is. I'm just throwing the whole supernatural aspect out there. It's like, hey, if they do have some ability to affect our perception, I don't think that can be limited to then the trauma that he can place on you. If he's really trying to scare you, then maybe he did a really good job. What you have is almost a Pavlovian effect. That's not a moral or character weakness on your part. There's nothing to be ashamed of in that. Again, I've rethought going in. I have never seen one. And I've thought, do I really want to go to the really primitive part of this particular, state park, since I know that they're in the area? Is that really something I want to try? Because again, as I said earlier, do we know how many people actually go missing every year because Bigfoot decided he wants some long pig, or the wrong person saw the wrong thing? I don't think that we do. And I think it's foolish to assume that like you said, this is not all Harry and the Hendersons. I cannot go into details. I swear to you, I can't. I've been asked not to. All I can say is there is a person who is known to me, and he's exceptionally trustworthy, who is having some real difficulties with a group of creatures that Bigfoot-like is all that they can really be described as. And I'm just saying they are clearly trying to terrorize him, but they've assaulted some of his animals, and it's entirely possible that they've tried to assault in sort of on a very subtle way one of an older family member. The simple fact of the matter is, I don't think that we can assume that all of these creatures are wanting to paint with the wind and sing Kumbaya with all the bunny rabbits, right?
Right.
Even if they are just animals, that means that they're going to be erratic. And if they are something else entirely, then that means they have an agenda. And again, if they vary by creature to creature as to far what agenda is or what it is, then we can't sit there and say that they're all these peace-loving hippies that just want to, be one with the earth. Some of them are going to have an opinion that you may not want to live, right? And so I think all you're trying to say is, hey, be aware of the situation. Don't go in there assuming that this is all safe. It's not safe. This is a very
exactly what we're trying to do. I wasn't trying to make this all about me. I just knew I had. I had a side of input on this that from personal experience.
Yeah.
But see, with me, there's a conflict because I can't just get away from it.
Yeah.
I can't just set it down. I have to do something with it, because if I don't, it's like let me give you another bad analogy. It's like taking.
I love bad analogies, by the way.
Okay, this is probably a bad one, but it's equatable to what I'm going to say here. You cup your hand over the water and you hold this air bubble down under the water with your hand. Okay, now you've got your hand cup and you've got it under the water and there's air in here. Well, what happens? It's a human hand. It's it's not a cup, so bubbles start to come out from the side. You're fallible, you're starting to move, and this stuff starts to creep out. Well, that's what happens. I think when you try to suppress a truth, something that you know for a fact, it starts to come out in other places. Anxiety. I would, like I said, drive down the road, look into the woods and get this washed over feeling. Have nightmares. Linda hears me yelling at somebody and then she's waking me up. But as long as I'm doing something with it, those things don't happen. So it's kind of there's still a conflict there. I still have this issue, and I'm conscious of these things. I'm aware that they're going to happen. If I prepare myself right, everything is fine. It's all good. But I know there is a possibility this thing could step out, and whether it gets us or not, that's would have to be hashed out in the moment. Excuse me, I suppose. But I know it's possible. And that may sound crazy to people that have spent thousands of hours into the woods and not ever come across anything. I know that probably sounds nuts. I get it. That's why I still am able to go back at all, because I don't think anything's going to get me, but I still have these issues, and it's physical. I can't set it aside. I can't put it away. And I've tried to tell myself, well, it's just a decision. I can just decide to go and be okay. I'm not going to let this bother me. It doesn't work. It didn't work last time. We went to Collins. The one time I went out and filmed with those guys, my stomach went nuts, which was the second time that happened to me in the same exact place. When we went to Collins, where I had my encounter, I didn't go anywhere. I stayed in my truck while they went out for 2 days that we were there. And I felt bad about that. I did. When I was out of the truck, I was cutting wood. I had the axe in my hand. I was chopping. And then I did some interviews around the campfire. I was by the fire. Everyone else was around me, and the tents were all around. I didn't think anything was going to come out and get us. I didn't set up a tent out there. I slept in my truck when we were out there. So I knew these things, but I still had to make these preparations to keep from feeling this way. And as bad as that sounds, well, why do you still do it? I can't not do it now. I have to be in this subject, doing something with it. It's like medication, I suppose, or an
therapy.
Yeah,
therapy.
Yeah, no,
yeah, you want to call it
absolutely.
therapy? That's what it is. So that's where I am. That's where I am. Like I said, I wasn't trying to make this about me. I just knew I had a side to tell in this. So I guess it's all ended up being about me.
Okay, so let's take it beyond you for a second. I think by bringing this to you are talking about something that a lot of people just don't think to talk about or don't want to talk about, right? And what you're doing is you're allowing yourself to be vulnerable for a greater good, which is, I think a lot of people absolutely feel the exact same way you do. Sorry, you're over there. They feel the exact same way you do, right? I think they do. I think there's a ton of people who've had very similar experiences, and they feel like sort of what you're saying, right? Like, why are there all these people who've had similar experiences, or at least some kind of experience, and they're all perfectly okay going back in, right? That's a great question as to why that discrepancy exists.
Well, I'd like to know what they're doing. How are you able to do this?
But what I think is most important, though, is I think we need to talk about what you're experiencing, and because you are, in many ways, you're stand-in for, I think, a much broader number of people. I think there's a lot of people who have experiences like you did, and feel the exact same way you do. They are now, again, their paradigm was changed. They felt fear. There was a traumatic event, and the problem is, I think our community doesn't do well we don't do well with allowing people to feel that fear and process that trauma. It's like, well, just get back out there, go face down that apex predator who may want to rip you in half, right? Like, that's not how we would treat anyone, right? I mean, again, when soldiers come back, that is something we as a culture need to start dealing with, is their PTSD. Well, but there's other forms of it, right? Other people experience it, from whether it's being in a bad car accident, homicide detectives seeing seeing just how bad humanity really can be, people being in hospitals. Like, these things are all traumatic events that need to be worked through, and we can't just artificially be like, okay, well, you're fine, right? We need to be able to understand that, and I think we need a lot more compassion from this community as far as people who've had traumatic experiences. And like I said, maybe, I don't need things to be supernatural for this to have been a traumatic experience, right? Whatever this creature was, looked at you and said, I want to scare you for whatever reason. And he made that impression very clear on your psyche. Okay, you know what? The message was received, but that doesn't mean that what you are feeling is somehow invalid. And you, in many ways, are standing for a lot of people right now who've had that experience, and they're afraid to speak about it. So if we want to move beyond you, I think that's fine. Let's move beyond you and just say, there's two real big truths to take from this, right? One, this is not all, like you said, they're not all teddy bears. There are, whether it's 1 or 1,000 people a year, but I guarantee you people are being killed by these things.
Yeah.
We just don't know how many, right?
I've talked to 2 people that have been attacked already.
Yeah.
No.
So, I mean, that's the thing, right? We don't know what that number is, but we know that it exists. And we do know that they're apex predators, so to assume that they aren't killing people is kind of ignorant. But the second thing is, even if they aren't, they have the ability to, either through natural or supernatural means, really impress that fear on you. And that's a traumatic effect, and we need to respect that traumatic event on the eyewitness, right? Okay, so one of my sons, my oldest sons, I have two sons and a daughter. This kid, I swear, we need to wrap him in bubble wrap. He's this active kid. He loves to play all these different sports. He cannot stay out of the hospital. just yesterday, literally, he was just playing a little street basketball with no one around. He just fell wrong and tore his ACL. And I'm like, how perfectly flat ground. He just landed wrong. And I'm like, and I looked at my son, I'm like, you realize we need to wrap him in like bubble wrap. Like this kid he got a concussion playing in the pool. He literally broke his back playing basketball. It wasn't a terrible, but it was just a hairline fracture. But I'm like, that's not the kind of injury you're supposed to receive playing basketball.
Right. But what you're saying here is he's not afraid to go right back out and do it again.
Well, it's beyond that. But it's actually what I'm saying is I can't look at him and say he can't be hurt. Like he can be hurt, right? And that's the problem is some people can do all the same things he did and he didn't get hurt. But he did. But he does. We need to be okay. We need to say, hey, okay, that's okay. Everyone's going to be different, right? And we can't simply say you're bad or you're less because you had this experience and you're afraid to go into it and this guy's good. What we need to say is let's all be compassionate for everyone and realize that these things need to be okay, right? We need to have compassion for everyone and realize that, hey, you had an experience that maybe we didn't have.
Well, for me, it's about understanding what these people have done. And maybe it's the type of person they are. Maybe it's the type of person I am. Mm-hmm. But when when I talk about these creatures not being all cuddly and fluffy, I'm on the flip side of that coin, I believe some of them are. I think some of them know that they scare us, and they take lengths not to show themselves to us to put that effect on us. I think they do. I think they don't want to have any kind of bad interactions with us at all. Some of them. Mm-hmm. Okay, whether it's because it's from a different type or a different tribe, or that's a whole nother ball of wax to get into, which we've done here probably plenty of times. But the reality is they are there. Okay.
Yes.
These creatures are out there. However, it's a crapshoot what you're going to run into if you run into one. If it's going to be a glimpse, if it's going to be something that's affecting you. And I understand that I had a very specific, special situation. And I think that's the only reason it happened the way it happened is because I was out there around them for so long. And I think they already thought I knew they were there just because of the interactions we had had. And I think they knew who I was. I really think if anybody would have gone out there that same day, done the exact same thing that I did, nothing would have happened. But it was because it was me. And they knew I'd be back doing these things again. I'm doing all these different things. I'm hunting past deer season. Now I'm after the turkeys. There's all these turkeys are coming. I think all these things came together in this one perfect lightning strike moment, for lack of a better term, Russell. And I was essentially struck by lightning. This happened to me. Okay, I made it out alive. I made it out fine. I think back on the thing a whole lot. He didn't want to hurt me. There's no way he would have. They have the ability to do these things. If he wanted me, he could have snuck up on me and took me out, but he didn't. He still wanted me to know that I crossed the line, though. This is all how I see these things. I could be 100% wrong about any of it. But I don't think I am. There are answers to these questions, and when you break it all down, and being able to place in the things that we don't know, because we can't know everything, so we fill those gaps in with what we believe. I don't have that luxury to believe a lot of the things anymore. And I think that's part of the issue. That's why I say it's a luxury to believe in one of these creatures and to not know. Mm-hmm. I'll say that for the rest of my life. I think you're better off seeing it from a distance, getting a glimpse, knowing what you saw is what you saw, and not convincing yourself that it was something else, because that happens too. Mm-hmm. Happens to a lot of people. They see it and they're like, it had to be a bear. Or someone else is with them and they see the same thing you did. You know what you saw, and they're convincing you it was a bear. We go through all that stuff too. And the creature doesn't make it any easier for us. And the whole thing about this subject is because of the state of it, because of the state of the subject right now, if they all died tomorrow, it wouldn't affect any of us in any way. It wouldn't affect me. I know that. If they were all gone, because they're not valid, it's so easy for people that haven't had an experience with them to place it back here. Right. Even if they believe wholeheartedly that they're real, you can go on with your life without ever having to look into it or deal with it again because they're not right there in front of us. So here's a dilemma, for those of us who have had these experiences. That's why I can't get out of it. I can't. I'll always have to have something to do with this, I think. And it's not that I don't want to. I enjoy doing it. I've learned to enjoy doing this and get out and make films. And I've learned a lot, met a lot of great people, both of you guys doing this. I probably wouldn't know you otherwise if we hadn't done this. And, most everybody that's in this chat that I know and have talked to probably personally. So there we are.
You found a way to deal with it. You took that.
Linda found a way to deal with it. I just listened to her.
But you're doing it, and that's
right.
The thing is you have an out, you have a release, you have a way of coping with it. Being afraid of it isn't, is just normal. I mean, yeah, but you're dealing with it, but you don't want to go do it again. In your heart, you don't want to see it again.
No, I do want to show people that they're out there. I do want to go to Florida and make this film. I want to catch one on camera moving, and I will do that. I've convinced myself enough. I think I've put myself in enough of a position that I have to go do it now. And that's the way I feel anyway. Whether anybody else feels that way, don't sit here and tell me, no, Kerry, you don't have to go do it. I don't want to hear any of that stuff. Even if you believe that and you feel that way, don't tell me that, because I don't want to think that way. I want to think that I have to go do this. That way I will go do it. And we are going to go do it. Simple as that. We're going down there at some point. We're going to Florida. And the only reason I'm going to Florida is because I know where they are. I know the guy that knows. I know the guy that's going with us that knows where they are anyway. I think we have a good chance of catching them on film moving. So that needs to happen.
I think Mogollon was right. You found, again, whether it was Linda or whatever, but you are processing your experience, right? This is in a way very cathartic for you. This is your therapy of dealing with it. There's going to be 100 different ways for people to process this information. Unfortunately, I think a lot of people, very sadly, they don't process their traumas very well. They go into other things like alcohol abuse or drugs or other self-destructive behaviors. You've chosen to make something positive out of it, and which is including building this community. Sorry. I don't know where y'all see it. For me, it's over here, right?
You're right here. Yeah. Russell's down here. Just
everyone watching
like a mirror, though.
Yeah, they're probably the diddly doos down there. Either way, the point is there is a community of people who, as I see, I get to visit some of these other shows, I'm starting to see a lot of the same people are talking. Right, your processing what happened to you is, and your therapy is actually helping other people as well. Right.
I hope so.
It's building a community of people who are able to communicate. Again, the thing that the number one thing I've walked away from all of this is the impact that all of these experiences are having on so many people. Right. And I think
we want to hear about them. I want more people to come forward, and I wish they would. And that's why we do the Shutter now. And that is really, that's been a lot more therapeutic than anything, is sitting down, reading people's stories, doing the narrations. I did this last one I did. I even titled it Most Amazing Bigfoot Encounter Ever.
I just watched that.
It's insane what happened to this guy, but I believe him. I talked to him on the phone. He had to call me because when he emailed it to me, I guess he sensed some trepidation in me about it, because I don't want to do anything on the Shutter that I don't believe is genuine myself, which is probably everything that's sent to me, because I tend to believe everybody.
Yeah.
But he gave me his phone number. So I called him up and I talked to him for an hour. Yeah, just a regular dude. And this happened to him once. He had gone back many times after that. It never happened to him again. I want you to go listen to it. It's the very last video out there on the Shutter.
I'm 2 episodes behind. I'm sorry.
Oh, no, it's an excellent encounter. It's a really good show.
Quick. There's 3 of them on there. There's one from Arkansas, one from Minnesota, because those were requested. And then I put that. It's about 10 minutes long, the whole thing. It's great detail in it. And when I talked to him on the phone, it was the same exact thing, that what this guy experienced. He went back, but it wasn't traumatic for him. He said he felt perfectly at ease. So maybe you're right. Maybe there is this ability within them to maybe instill in us this fear and or this feeling that we need to be aware of certain things, I suppose. And some do that and some don't. You know, when he talked to these creatures, he spoke with them, and their mouths never moved. He said his mouth never moved, but as the words came out of him better than if he ever were trying to articulate or modulate actually, you know, out loud. So whatever happened to him, it was absolutely incredible. The whole thing, you guys need to hear it, and you need to go subscribe, by the way, to the Shutter. It's my new source of income, actually. And we are putting a new Odyssey up right here. We're going to North Mississippi next Saturday. I say we. Probably going to be just me. Depends on how Linda juggles work. North Mississippi, all the way up almost to Tennessee. I'll be there with Cam Buckner from Dixie Cryptid. This guy, Joe Flippo. He does kind of like counseling for people that have these experiences, because they have a lot of them up there. So he gets these people around campfires to talk about their experiences out in the open. And they're going to let me come up and film it. I'm going to do an interview with him and tell his story, essentially. And all the other stuff's going to be ancillary, you know, just like chapters in the story will be these people around this campfire telling their experiences. So it should be really interesting. It's going to be documentary style, you know, the way we normally do them. It'll be lucky number 13. But we're excited about it. So that'll be out just in a couple of weeks. It shouldn't take me 4 or 5 days to put it together and get it out once it's done. So I'll say next Saturday we film it. The following Saturday we'll be putting it out. So we're excited about that, about getting that out here on the Bigfoot Odyssey channel, and not just a live show with us sitting around BSing a little bit. Not BSing, but jacking our jaws back and forth. Well, hey, what time is it? We got an hour in.
Yeah,
I think we've had a pretty decent show. Myself.
I think so. Yeah, I mean, I'm glad to have actually finally sort of properly met Mogollon.
Absolutely,
right?
You too, Jason.
Yeah. So yeah, and Danielle needs to go to bed.
I did file for unemployment in June for Texas.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and it's a little bit more than that, but that pretty well covers the bills. Absolutely, so that's what keeping us afloat. Does anybody have any questions? Let's do this. Let's take a question right quick before we jet out of here. If anybody's got one, something we can discuss. Anybody want anything out there? I'm going to give you a second. And I just want to let everybody know, StreamYard is, when it comes to the comments, it's not like YouTube. You can only go back 50 comments.
Yeah.
It keeps rolling. So someone says, scroll back. I had a question. It's probably gone. So you might as well just all that time you took to say, hey, scroll back, just type it again. Because there's some questions on there that if I do see it doesn't have anything to do with what we're talking about, then I'll probably just kind of skip over it. That happens sometimes. We just like to keep everything in the same vein and not jump, around too much. It allows for us to come back and discuss those things later and not put everything on the table at one time. My chat quit moving. There's 194 people in here.
Yeah, mine's not moving either.
Mine moves like spurts. It's like it's right there, then it jumps up like 20 messages.
Oh yeah, sorry Daniela. Make sure you guys go check out Hidden Existence.
Yes. No, while we're
Hidden
waiting for some more pictures to come in or more questions to come in, can I say how wonderful Daniela is? I love work. Of course. I mean, she's wonderful. Y'all should go check her out. If I was, if she were to steal me away from text, I don't think that we could be stopped. Right? Because she's a wonderful interviewer. My rugged sexiness, there's no stopping that.
Absolutely.
Yeah, she does an awesome job. I love watching her show.
Yeah.
Here we go. What other, Steve? That's my buddy Steve Landry there. What's your input on the others? I don't know what the others are. I'm sorry. Give me some help here. Here we go. Jeff Sherman, Kerry, why do you think after hunting that property it chose to show itself? I think I was doing something that it didn't like. I was hunting past deer season. I was hunting something I hadn't hunted before, which was turkeys. I had burned off about a half an acre of land there, which I think the turkeys were in there. before, because it was about a little over a week. I burned it, and a little over a week later, I'd come back and hunt in that spot because turkeys like that. You burn a spot, seeds pop, and new shoots come up. They come and scratch around and eat. So it's just it's a turkey hunting thing. But when I was there that morning, I turkey hunted. There were at least 30 turkeys coming in. I called in the whole bloody flock, So I think that might have been part of it too. Did he think I was going to take all of them? He didn't. Maybe he didn't know. I do believe that it's a source of, obviously a source of food for them. Do they manage them? I don't know. There were no big gobblers, and I thought that was strange for a long time. You can hear a gobbler when you turkey hunt, and that's why you use this locator. You shake it, and it sounds like a turkey gobbling, but it sounds like a jake, which is a young turkey. Jakes, young males, when they gobble, they don't finish it. It's just kind of halfway, blah, 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 and that's it. And that's what this thing sounds like. And it's supposed to upset a bigger turkey and get him to come in and say, hey, what are you doing? This hen is mine. Okay, now I've got a reed in my mouth. I've got a box call. I'm trying to sound like several different turkeys. Okay. Now, when you do that, the big males hear that, and they're the ones that are going to come. They're going to get there first. Okay. And then the hunter shoots one of the turkeys, and that's it. Okay. If you don't shoot them, the rest of them will come right behind it. So I think all I did was just call in the rest of them because there were no big ones. Now you sit and think about this. What we believe, these abilities these creatures have, a turkey on the roost is pretty easy pickings. You just silhouette that bad boy, and because they just get up on a tree and sit there. And if these creatures can see them, silhouette them, just reach up and grab the biggest one is going to be the gobbler, right? Yeah. So and then save the hens, because eggs, that's another good source of food and protein right there. So I mean, something to think about. So I think I crossed the line. For 7 years I was around them, interacting with them, and didn't know it. I was too stupid to realize what was happening around me. Hearing talking, yelling at them, hearing strange animals that sounded like people, all these things that everybody's pretty well heard by now. But all these things that happened. But as soon as deer season was over, I wasn't hunting anymore. I wasn't even in there with a gun anymore. If I was in there, which was pretty much a lot of the time, it was clearing land or camping out or just hanging out. There was a little pond back there. I'd go fishing, all these things that I did back there by myself for 7 years. They were used to me. They knew who I was. And like I said, I think they thought, because I ran into them one night that I thought was a bunch of hogs. I think they thought I knew they were there anyway. So what's the point in hiding now? Right. So he comes out, he makes sure I'm not doing anything stupid, like going to shoot at him. And he gives me the third degree. It's essentially what I got from the whole thing, is he was just bitching at me. It wasn't, the traumatic part of it was that they're real, that they exist. And there's such a level of disbelief in it that in the moment I'm still trying to convince myself that this is somebody. The property I'm on belongs to this black family. The whole family lives on the road. That's who I see coming through the woods. That's who it is. Why wouldn't I believe that? Why wouldn't I think that immediately? If I'd have been anywhere else, I probably would have recognized it was something, out of the ordinary. It didn't look right. I knew it didn't look right, but I'm about to be face to face with him. I'm about to see what's going on with this guy. The only thing I was thinking, I believe at the time, I remember, is that this is an amateur. He doesn't know what he's doing. He's out here messing things up, and I'm fixing to have to school this guy, and then the bottom falls out. It's all of a sudden, it's, the worst possible scenario in my mind is there's a monster in the woods. Now, I got going so fast, I forgot where I was going. But that was the thing anyway. Right. I think he just came up, gave me the third degree, and left. That was it. And like I said, in the moment, I'm still trying to convince myself this is somebody. In that few seconds there, how's this dude doing this? Yeah, this is a dude. And then you hear the voice, and then finally it sunk in deep that this is something else here, and it was hard to handle.
Yeah, I think that what you just described right there, and again, maybe you were too close to the nest, right? Maybe there were some, and that's why he really needed this. He really felt like he needed to impress upon you. But I think, again, everything you just said reinforces what we've been saying this entire time, right? it wasn't just that you had a traumatic event. It was a traumatic event compounded by this radical paradigm shift that you had, right? I mean, people miss, it's very easy to understand how profound an experience you had. I mean, that's not just something that happens every day. I mean, I think that's really something I think we need to sort of accept is like, this is having your mind blown and having a paradigm shift can be in itself a traumatic event. So what you're having is this compounded event. I think that's something we really shouldn't lose sight of, and neither should you. I mean, this was not just like you said. How many people have just this weird experience where they're like, "Oh wow, I just saw this one thing walking down the road," right?
Right.
That's enough to shake most people, right? And you have this very rare event, right? I mean, I just don't
The
think we
whole
can.
situation is rare, and
Yeah.
and it's my own fault because I didn't put myself around other people. I went to the woods every day. I was out there just about every day. I could hardly think of a day that I didn't go out there. It's just 20 minutes up the road from where I lived. My wife at the time, she realized I was dealing with a lot of things that had happened to me, a lot of death in the family that I was, and close friends that I'd experienced all at one time. So this is how I'm dealing with it. She was good. We were fine with all that. So this thing happens because of that. I think because I was out there so much with them. I think if I hadn't gone so much, if I didn't have the interactions with them, if I think they just had to know that I thought they were there anyway. And I didn't realize it. And maybe I acted like I did because I was suspicious at times that it was somebody. There's somebody coming through the woods. There's somebody out there doing something. There were those moments. And there were so many things that happened that should have clued me into it, but I didn't know anything. I was completely and totally unaware. That's what we try to do here. Make people aware that you are on your 2x4 and it's actually 50 feet in the air and not laying on the ground. And you need to prepare yourself for that. Be a lot more careful when you're in the woods and expect it. Expect it when you least expect it, because it can happen. It can happen. But how were we at? 112. It's time to call it, gentlemen. It's been a great show.
No, it really has. Mid-South, though, he did. I don't know if you saw it storm by. He was just saying the others are the. He said the others that mimic Sasquatch,
Like
maybe Dogman or
Dogman, things like that. I don't discredit anything. Nothing. Yeah. I had reservations about Dogman, but simply because I think people were mistaken and thinking that Bigfoot, this thing they're seeing, was this Dogman. And then I talked to all these people that see this creature that's got a dog's head and digitigrade legs and am I gonna tell them what they saw? No, they saw what they saw. So that's where it stands with me. There are other things out there that Sasquatch take the blame for. I think a lot of these supernatural things that go on in certain areas, people think are Sasquatch and possibly couldn't be. They just happen to coexist in the same place. So I think that's a possibility. Anyway, it's a more rational explanation for an irrational point of view.
Mogollon, your thoughts? Just out of curiosity.
Yeah, give it to me.
I don't think what you've been feeling is irrational at all. I kind of zoned out there for a second, and
I can get going pretty fast.
Yeah. You said earlier about, why does somebody, experience something and react differently? And, everybody's wired differently. People deal with fear in so many different ways. I mean, I'm the type of person that runs towards danger. Like I hear an car accident, I'm running to it.
I think I would have been the same way too. That's what gets me is I think I would have been I would have put myself in the category of the person that would want to go back and see what it was, but I just can't do it.
I'm not saying I would do it. I mean, if I actually had an experience, I don't know how I'm going to react. I mentioned one time I had an experience with a presence in the house that was, it just scared the hell out of me. I didn't see anything, but I got that primal fear where I got so afraid that I got pissed off. I got mad.
It's got to be worse. That has to be worse.
And there was nothing there. There was nothing to yell at, but there was that fear that something was in that room, and I felt it.
Right.
Yep.
Well, I think we covered a lot of the bases. I hope you guys got a little bit of something out of that. We did. Make sure you go and subscribe to the Shutter. Make sure you go and subscribe to Trinity Paracryptid Research. Make sure you go and subscribe to Mogollon Monster. Make sure you subscribe to Hidden Existence, Daniela's show. Make sure you do that. That's this Wednesday. We're going to have the researchers' reports. I can't remember who's on there. We do have Ken Gerhard coming up, I think the week after next. We've got all that lined up this Saturday, going to film the next Bigfoot Odyssey number 13. So looking forward to that. Thank you, Jason. Thank you, Russell, for showing up here tonight.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me. Jason, pleasure to meet you.
Yes.
Till the next late show that we do this spur of the moment.
Right on.
Good night, everybody.
Good night, guys.
Night.